Hi, so if you clicked on this video, you got here from one of three sources. The guides-FAQ channel, which is currently not updated to have the guide at the moment, because it's still not done by all means, or the announcement in the Discord server, the website, or through searching for customized. If you are the latter, welcome to Sapphire. This is going to be an in-depth guide on how to set it up. Let's begin. First of all, you're going to notice the fact that there are four versions. 1123H2, 1124H2, 1022H2, and Server 2022. Now, which one is the best version? Well, there is no definitive answer. The best answer to this would be to test. But since most of you are lazy, I'm going to give you a rundown of pros and cons for each version available. 24H2. In most cases, this is the best version, especially on AMD. Although it has a couple of quirks, such as classic alt tab being gone, nvclean not working, but that is not going to affect this guide as I don't recommend using it, and instead we will manually debloat the driver. Also, it doesn't work on Core 2 series CPUs or older. Now, I doubt that in 2025 you're on a Core 2 Duo or a Core 2 Quad, although I did have a complaint that 24H2 does not boot on a Core 2 Duo laptop. So, if you find yourself in the same case scenario, use an older version. Next up is 23H2. Now this is generally more stable than 24H2 for Intel platforms. Although it is outdated, most of the time performs worse than 24H2 and performs worse on AMD. Server 2022. Now this is like Windows 10, but with timer resolution and a couple of other Windows 11 features in a lighter Explorer. The cons being the fact that this has a lot of driver issues, especially on AMD GPUs, but a fix will be shown in the video. Most network cards, especially from Intel, do not work on this without modded drivers. And it has a lot worse performance on AMD, although sometimes this is the best version on Intel, even though most of the time 23H2 and 24H2 still shine. Now, this also has some driver-related blue screens that can be caused by outdated drivers, although in most cases it is caused by network drivers. Another con is the fact that Faceit does not work on it, despite the fact that it still gets security updates actively. Windows 10 22H2. Now, I really could not think of any pros for this version, so I'm just going to say the fact that it is the best for people that hate Windows 11 and have problems on Windows Server and just entirely refuse to use Windows 11 due to myths that are not true, such as Windows 11 performing worse than 10. The cons being the fact that it is outdated, soon losing updates, no timer resolution, cannot disable start menu anymore, performs worse than all of the above. Now that we've gotten the versions out of the way, pick your selected one. The setup isn't too different across them. I will personally choose Windows 11 24H2, but there is going to be a slight intermission for server and AMD GPUs when I get to the drivers part. Now, if you're wondering what the difference between Superlight and Ultralight is, the best way to put it is how the website says it. The main difference is that Ultralight has even more components removed than Superlight, catering to users who want a lighter ISO and are less concerned about compatibility. Performance differences are minimal, though Ultralight may boot slightly faster as it loads fewer files. Both versions include the same system tweaks. I will personally go with Ultralight since it takes a lot less to download. From here on out, you just open the link, click on download. From here on out, just wait for the ISO download to be completed. Once the download is over, open a new tab and type in Rufus. From here on out, click on the top link and download the first version. From there on out, open it, click select the ISO, change the file system to FAT32 if it is NTFS by default, and start. Skip to the timestamp on the screen right now in order to... Now for the no USB part. Skip to the timestamp on screen to continue with USB. So, open a new tab, type in DISM++, open the Chew Team GitHub page, and download the latest release. From here on out, extract it, and open the folder, open the DISM++ x64.exe, except go to File, Apply Image, Browse, select the ISO, add boot, format, browse again, and go to the drive you want to format. Now, if you do not have another partition, open up a new tab, type in macrorit, open the top page, go to Partition Expert, and download the free version. Once the download is done, open it, extract the zip file, and install it. Once you're in, click on the volume you would like to shrink. In most cases, this is the C drive, and click on Resize/Move Volume. From here on out, drag the slider as far back as you can, and click OK. From here, right-click on the unallocated space, create volume, click OK. Then click on Commit, and OK again. If you need to restart into pre-OS mode, do it and then continue from there on out with the ISM++ open. Click OK, OK again, and you're done. After this is finished, you can boot straight into the ISO and continue from the timestamp on screen. Now onto USB again. For this, you need to find your motherboard's boot selection key, although it should usually tell you how to get into the BIOS while you're booting. Let me show off an example real quick. And as you can see, it says press delete or F2 to enter the UEFI BIOS settings. From here on out, you can either change your boot priority, which I would love to be able to, and set your UEFI USB disk to the top, or go to advanced settings, go into boot, find boot override, and then from there on, choosing your USB. Now that we're in the pre-installation environment, we have to click the Windows setup icon at the bottom. From here on out, you're going to see the SapphireOS background and setup is starting text. From here on out, just wait until your partitions pop up. Now that your partitions are visible, install on your desired partition. Now, if you get an issue like this, what you're supposed to do is try again. And if it does not work again, I will be showing you a workaround, but let's try again. Now, I personally know this won't work as my motherboard, for some reason, has issues with installing Windows. Even I myself do not know why. Now, if you get the same error again, what you can do is open up the DISM++ at the bottom, click on Accept, go to File, Apply Image. On the first browse, go to this PC, select your USB, go to Sources, click on Install.esd. On the second browse, go to this PC and select your partition, then select Folder. From here on out, click on Add Boot Format, OK, and then click OK again. And now it should be installing. So just wait. Once it's done, click OK, open Setup, then press Shift F10 and type in WP util shutdown, and wait. Now, boot up your PC again. And when Windows gets here, you're going to notice Windows 11. Just press Enter. You can also see Windows Server or Windows 10. Now, once you get here, just wait. You're going to get into the administrator account almost instantly and just wait for the post-install script. Now, from here on out, you can restart manually, and then we'll get on to how to install your drivers. From here on out, we need to install drivers. So if needed, you have to open display settings and select a higher resolution, as the Sapphire tool will not be able to display properly. From then on, open the Sapphire tool and head over to the download section, from where you're going to download the browser of your choice. I am personally going to go with Firefox, as this is my main browser at the current moment. Now for this, you are going to need to find out what motherboard you have. For this, you have two options. You can open up system information, and it should be telling you right here what motherboard you have. Or you can open up CMD and type in WMIC baseboard get manufacturer, comma, and product. From here on out, you can type in the product itself into Google, and from here you can get your drivers. Now for Asus, you have to click on support, then head over to driver and utility, select your OS version, and grab LAN drivers. Note that if needed, you should grab audio drivers too. For MSI, the procedure is very similar. Google your motherboard, click on the MSI link. Sometimes you're going to be on specifications. From there on, just click on support. Not this one, this one. It's going to leave you at drivers and downloads. From here, click on driver. Select your operating system. Click LAN drivers, and if needed, onboard audio drivers. For ASRock, the procedure is also very similar. Just Google your motherboard. Click on the link for it. Then scroll down and click on support here, not at the top. From here, click on download. And again, grab your LAN driver and if needed, audio driver. I really do not recommend using chiplet drivers. On Gigabyte, the procedure is also very similar. Just Google your motherboard, click on the Gigabyte link, go to support, not the one at the top again. Here you really don't need to select your operating system since it will default to all, and download your LAN driver and audio driver if needed. You can find LAN here. Once you've gotten your drivers, just install them. The procedure is extremely simple. Just extract the zip file and click on setup.exe. Next, install. And just wait. Now from here, just click on finish and you're done. Now for the NVIDIA driver. So open up your browser again, open a new tab, and Google NVIDIA drivers. Now click on the top link, select your product, your GPU series, your operating system, and click on Find. From here, download the Game Ready driver. Note that the top Studio driver is worse for gaming, so do not get Studio drivers, instead get Game Ready drivers. Now if you want to, you can experiment with older versions, although I personally recommend the latest. So just grab the latest version by clicking on View and then clicking on Download. Now wait for the download to be finished. Once it is finished, open your Downloads folder, right-click, hover over 7-zip and click Extract to Folder. Once that is done, open the folder, select something and then click Ctrl and A to select everything. Then hold Ctrl and click setup.exe, setup.cfg, nvidia2 and display driver. Then press Shift plus Delete to delete everything else. Now, you can either rename setup.cfg to setup.txt and see if you can edit it. If you can't, rename it back to setup.cfg and open up the Sapphire tool. Head over to Downloads and look for Notepad++. Then select it and download it. Open folder and install it. Untick Run Notepad++ and go back to your Downloads folder and open up the driver folder again. Right-click setup.cfg and edit with Notepad++. Now, usually would not be this low, but just scroll down until you find the file name section. From here, remove privacy policy consent file and up until eula.txt. Then save the driver and open up NVIDIA2. Look for presentations.cfg. You can try to rename it .txt and then back to CFG, but if you need Notepad++, just use it. Then remove the lines that I'm going to show you. Then save and open setup.exe and set up the driver as usual. Now on to setting up the AMD video driver. Now, I do not recommend using Radeon Software Slimmer. I much prefer manually debloating the AMD driver too. So start up by Googling your graphics card. Now, I have an RX 580, so I'm going to Google RX 580 drivers. From here on out, I'm going to click on Drivers Support for Processors and Graphics. From here on out, go to Graphics. Select your series. I have a Radeon 600, 500, and 400. I'm going to select Radeon RX 500 series. From here on out, I'm going to click on my GPU, click on Submit, select my operating system, and download the latest driver. Then I'm going to open up my Downloads folder. Right-click the driver, click on 7-zip and extract to. From here, I'm going to open WHQL, I'm going to minimize the browser, and create a new folder on my desktop. Now I'm going to call it AMD driver. That's not how you spell driver. Here on out, I'm going to click on Packages, Drivers, Display, WT6A_INF, select the .cat file, .inf, and the random string. I'm going to cut these and put them in AMD driver. From here, I'm just going to install. Now for AMD drivers on Windows servers. So what you have to do is start off by opening the INF file and then searching for this line. Now from here, select everything past 10. Click Ctrl and H and delete anything if you have something in replace with and then replace all. Now, find the same line again. And where you see ati.mfg, here, remove everything past 10 and save the INF file. Now open Device Manager click on Display Adapters, right-click Microsoft Basic Display Adapter, click on Properties, Driver, Update Driver, browse my computer for drivers, let me pick from a list of available drivers on my computer, click on Have Disk, Browse, and select the INF file. Now from here, you're going to notice the fact that we have Radeon RX 580 series. Select it, click on Next, wait for the driver to install. It's going to tell you that Windows cannot verify the publisher of this driver software, but just click install this driver anyways, as editing the INF file basically removes the driver signature. As you can see, the video driver is installed. Now, this is a in general thing you should do after your driver is installed, which is go into the random string and then look for ccc2 underscore install.exe and run it, as this will install your AMD software. Or as they call it, the Adrenaline software. Then click on close, and if you type in AMD here, you're going to notice the fact that now you have AMD settings. Here you go. Note that if you're on a laptop that requires the audio drivers from the video driver for the microphone to work, go back to Packages, select Drivers, Audio, and then grab ACP Bus, ACP AFD, ACP Bus 2, and I2SDDM for it to work. Cut them and put them in AMD driver and install each INF file manually. Once you are done with your video driver, open up the Sapphire tool, head over to the Tweaks section, tick Disable Wi-Fi if you don't use Wi-Fi or Spotify, tick Intel TSX if you're on an Intel Core i-Series 9th Gen or older CPU, take Clipboard if you want to use WinShift-S to take screenshots. Serialized timer expiration is a tweak that I used to think was really good, but apparently it worsens latency as it messes up with DPCs, so I really do not recommend using it anymore. For hacks, there is no definitive answer, although it is usually better to have ticked if you play DX12 games, although you are better off testing for yourself. Classic Alt-Tab, you should pick this if you're not on 24H2 and you do not like the immersive UI for Alt-Tab. You can untick it if it is ticked by default if you prefer the new one. Disable Bluetooth. Untick this if you use Bluetooth. Boot menu policy standard. Tick this if you don't like the old one. Disable VPN. Untick this if you want to use the VPNs, although this does not affect private internet access for some reason. Disable NTFS encryption unless you want to use Microsoft Store. Disable FSO in game bar has no definitive answer. On 24H2 it is better to keep unticked, although on other versions you should test for yourself. CD-ROM. Tick it if you're on a virtual machine and want to install VMware tools or VirtualBox tools or whatever. Or you have a disk drive. Untick Disable Prefetch if you're on an HDD as your boot drive. Untick Disable Print Spooler if you want to use a printer. For no lazy mode, there is also no definitive answer, as it can sometimes cause instability in power CFG/energy. As you can see, I have 40 errors, 4 warnings, and 30 informational. Now, with no lazy mode, some people usually get a lot more or a lot less. It really depends, so just test for yourself. Although this does help timer resolution, and in general, I recommend taking it on. Taking UAC for admin account enables UAC on the admin account, which is the default user account for Sapphire. Disable start menu should be toggled unless you're on Windows 10 and plan to use OpenShell, Start as back, or Start all back. Now, I would like to test Disable Multiplane Overlay, as it is usually better on 24H2, but on older WinVers it can be iffy. Disable lock screen if you want to no longer see the lock screen and instead have a black screen. Now, I really do not recommend taking disable threaded DPCs, since an ordinary DPC preempts the execution of all threads. It cannot be preempted by a thread or by another DPC. If the system has a large number of ordinary DPCs queued, or if one of those DPCs runs for a long time, every thread will remain paused for an arbitrarily long time. Thus, each ordinary DPC increases system latency, which can hurt the performance of time-sensitive applications such as audio or video playback, which more than usually leads to practically worse latency. Now, if you're trying to say, oh, but on SapphireOS I have low DPC latency, well, moving your mouse generates about 5,000 DPCs, even higher if you have more than 1k hertz. And even then, even having a game open will generate even more, so this does actually end up in worse latency. Large system cache. This is usually placebo, but it does work on Windows Server. From here, just take system profile tweaks and NVMe tweaks if you are using an NVMe drive. Next up, we have gaming tweaks. Now, if you are an NVIDIA user, I would like you to test preemption, as in some cases, it is worse to disable it. But if you are too lazy to test, just don't disable it. Next up, we have disable HDCP. Now, this from the tool does not work, so go to post install, GPU, NVIDIA, and use disable HDCP batch. Now, if you watch Netflix or Disney Plus or anything like that on your computer, I do not recommend using this. As I do not, I'm going to run it. Next up, we have network optimizations, run if new drivers. Now, since we installed new drivers, we're going to have to apply it. Now, don't reboot yet. Just close it and click close again. Services. Now, for the best performance, use minimal. Although, this breaks a lot of programs, I would usually recommend doing this after you've completely set up your Windows install. Now, since I'm not going to be using this install, I'm going to set it up anyways. So, click on minimal, click yes, and then OK, and then close. Next up, we have SVC host split threshold. Now here, just click the amount of RAM you have. Note that if you want to use Xbox services or Xbox Game Pass, you're going to have to revert this tweak. Note that if you have above 32 gigabytes of RAM, you have to go back to post install folder, go into others, and then SVC host split threshold in KB, where you have to click on set SVC host split threshold in KB to F 8 times, and then close the batch file. Next up, we have Win32 priority separation. Now, I personally recommend 26, although 2A and 24 are also good options. Now on to NVIDIA GPU tweaks. So I personally recommend starting off by clicking NIP and then OK. Now, P-State 0. This will make your GPU work a lot harder by pushing the highest core clocks it can at all times. Although this is going to higher power consumptions, it is going to help percentile lows a lot, as your GPU will use more power to push more frames. Disable ECC. Disable telemetry if you don't plan to use GeForce Experience or the NVIDIA app. Unrestrict clock policy can potentially fix thermal downclocking. Now, this might lower your card's lifespan, although it is going to make it drop less frequency per hotter the card gets. So this may improve FPS. So use this at your own risk. And lastly, miscellaneous. Now, onto AMD GPU tweaks. Now, here I only recommend using the words, shader cache always on, and if you're on an older driver, disable DX Navi. Note that this only applies to Navi GPUs and older drivers. Useful tools. Auto runs. Here, click on agree, and disable whatever you want. For example, I don't need Mozilla Firefox background update. I don't need RDP clip, Asus update check, and Mozilla maintenance. I don't need Intel Serial IO GPIO controller, and I don't need Adobe Type Manager or Internet Explorer. Next up is DevMan View. This is like a GUI for Device Manager where you can disable devices. can disable stuff such as Microsoft JS Wavetable Synth, or your HDMI audio. Next up is ServiWin. Now this is like a list of services and drivers. I really do not recommend messing with this unless you're a more advanced user. Although, just so you know, minimal services takes care of pretty much most of these, so don't worry too much about this. Inspector. Now, this is used to disable Spectre and Meltdown mitigations. I only recommend this if you're on a older than 10th gen CPU or Ryzen 3000 or older. Mouse Tester. This is used to test your polling rate stability. As this install is not yet done, you can see that my polling rate stability is pretty bad. I'm not going to bother retesting after I'm done with tweaking, but just so you know, it gets better. Sudo. This is used to run applications with privileges above administrator, such as trusted installer and system. Whilst you're using this, I really recommend ticking the enable all privileges checkbox. CRU, also known as Custom Resolution Utility. This is mainly used for monitor overclocking or setting your monitor to an exact refresh rate. As you can see here, I have 143.999 Hz. What I can do is go and click on Add, set the timing to exact reduced, and set my refresh rate to about 144. And as you can see, it's going to be exact. Now, for it to apply, I would actually have to restart my video driver, open display settings, and change my refresh rate. Auto DSCP policy. This will automatically set your DSCP policy for your game, although you need your game to be installed first. I really recommend doing this as it can drastically lower ping. MSI Mode Utility or MSI Util. This enables message signaled interrupts. I recommend doing this, although enabling it on SATA controllers or audio controllers can cause crackling or blue screens, so beware. I also do not recommend setting your GPU to high interrupt priority. DISM++. This is usually used to clean caches, and as you can see, SapphireOS comes with a preset that deletes all caches once you click Cleanup. And as you can see, it has already freed 44.7 megabytes. Device Cleanup. This is used to clean up unused devices. I recommend doing this sort of often, do it pretty much weekly or something, so... Interrupt Affinity Policy Tool. This is used to set interrupt affinities. I'm actually going to make a video on how to properly set your GPU affinity in another video, so stay tuned. HID USB. Now, the one in the tool really does not work, so you have to open up the post-install folder again, go to Tweaks, HID USB-F, Driver, and then open up setup.exe. Now, this can improve polling rate stability on mouses that have 1 or 2K Hertz. Anything above really does not get that much of an improvement, so don't really bother with it. Measure Sleep. This is used to check your timer resolution. It shows you the delta from the desired 1 millisecond timer res that you were asking for. I'm going to make a separate video on micro adjusting. Process Explorer. This is like an alternative for Task Manager. Now, if you're going to use this, I would recommend right-clicking on the columns, clicking on Select Columns, click on Process Performance, and then selecting Context Switches Delta and Cycles Delta, where you can see just how many resources all of your background processes use. Lastly, reserved CPU sets. This is used to reserve the CPUs used for your affinities, which basically means that Windows will not schedule background stuff on said core. Although beware that this may cause your core not to be used by games. This is generally used for cores that have affinities set on them to have lower latency. So Now, since we are pretty much done, open up the post-install folder, click on Others, then DMA remapping, and use Disable DMA remapping. And this was it for the setup. I hope you guys enjoy SapphireOS even more now, or just generally enjoy SapphireOS if you're new. I'm going to make a couple more guides in the future, and if you would like even better performance, buy the premium tool. Goodbye.